Hello and welcome everyone. Come on in. Happy to have you here this afternoon. We got 10 people in the house already. We got people commenting, letting me know that they are here and ready to go. Hello, Raul. Hello, Bianca and Anthony. I think Anthony was first. All right. Awesome. Appreciate you all being here live. I've got a lot of ground to cover today, a lot that I want to discuss with you. But before we get into all the weeds, I was having a little technical issue, so I just want to double check that my audio is good. So just give me a thumbs up, anyone that is live. Give me a thumbs up that my audio is good, and as it relates to my cameras, let me know that you can see my whiteboard nice and clear. It does look like my front camera has me a little bit laggy, but if y'all don't see that, then that's good. But if I am looking a little choppy, let me know in the comments, okay, as well as my audio. All right, and while I'm working on that, I've got an announcement to share with you all that many of you that have been following me for many years now, some of you in the house that have been following me since 2018, 2019, right, when I first started the YouTube channel. And those of you that are brand new or just maybe under a year in, you're really going to enjoy this announcement that I have to share with you. And I'm going to share my screen so that you can be a part of this. So the big announcement is that I am getting married. So those of you that are clients, you're on my email newsletter, you already know this information, you've already been updated. But this is my first time like publicly announcing, I think, on YouTube that I'm, getting married next month, right? It's going to be a destination wedding. It's going to be really, really exciting. And to really have a fun time with you all before the actual wedding date. So if you hadn't noticed, right, I'm already like legally married. I already got that taken care of. But the actual like wedding ceremony, all that good stuff, the big party, that is going to happen next month. And so on February 11th, let me make sure I'm sharing my screen for this. You guys can see this real quick. Okay. So here you go. You're gonna want to mark your calendars. February the 11th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're gonna do a watch party, a live watch party. We're gonna have a special guest on the YouTube channel. And it is that beautiful woman right there. Allison is going to be our special guest. She's going to join us on that evening, February 11th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Be there. Have your snacks ready. I've got a special treat for all of you, okay? And you're going to really see the pregame work that went into putting this entire marriage together, right? So I recorded my entire proposal and basically made a movie out of it because I am a content creator. And so you guys will be able to see that, the proposal, and then I will be recording the entire wedding, right, start to finish. And then my goal, once I compile all that data, I'm gonna send it to my editor. We're gonna make it nice and clean, and then we'll do another watch party on the wedding. I'll see what I want to share, how I want to do it. But February 11th is going to be a proposal watch party, not the wedding itself, but the proposal watch party. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy that. And then we're going to have a special guest, Allison, with us if you want to ask her some questions, if you want to pray over us, right? Because I know I have a lot of people that watch the channel that are ministers, pastors, leaders of churches all across the United States. So I'm going to have the option for you to call in. And so I'll bring people up one at a time. And if you want to pray over us, if you want to give us any tips, insights, if you've been married for 2, 3, 4, 5 decades, right, and you want to give any insight, any advice, we will gladly receive that discernment, that wisdom, that advice, those tips, feedbacks, etc., etc. So that is it for the announcements. Today is primarily focused on how you can become debt-free this year. Okay? Now, or at the very least, get on the path, right? Establish a foundation, establish a strategy, a belief system for you to become debt-free in a period of time, let's say anywhere from 5 to 7 years or less. And technically speaking, if we want to become debt-free this year, depending on how much debt you have, right? Let's say you are the average American that has multiple 6 figures of debt, or let's say at least over 100,000 of consumer debts, and then maybe 2, 3, 4, 500K of a mortgage, right? So if you're in that ballpark, 100 to 500, maybe upwards of $1 million or more of debt, that is a large number to become debt-free this year in 1 year, right? So I don't want you to get confused by the title, how you can become debt-free this year. It's really referring to how you can get on board with that idea of becoming debt-free, of eliminating all these different financial obligations that you have to institutions, banks, lenders, you name it, right? Developing the strategy, developing the foundation, developing the belief system for you to achieve that. But if we wanted to get technical and say, well, yeah, how can I become debt-free this year? There's only one way to do it that I know how. And that's literally to 10x your income. That's literally to increase income at a dramatic rate, right? So I say 10x, right? So wherever you're at currently, if you were to 10x your net after-tax take-home income, and you did that for 12 consecutive months, there's a very, 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 very high chance you would just simply write a check in month 12 and just pay off all your debts, or if you did it in chunks, right? So that's just being technical with the title. But for everyone else that is coming out of 2024 and you're like, okay, I did not take advantage of 2024. I dropped the ball, or I've been dropping the ball the last few years, ever since COVID or even before then. And you're just like, okay, it's the new year, it's 2025. You're setting new goals, new standards, new expectations, right? And you want to achieve exactly what you want to look for, okay? We need to develop, right, those initial ground game, pre-game work, foundational steps to help us get to that next phase in life. And we're going to figure out what have you been doing that we're going to do different this year to achieve a different goal, okay? The majority of people watching this YouTube channel have lots of debts, okay? And for many of you watching, even the 26 people live at this very moment, that have a desire to either become debt-free or pay off a majority of your debts, okay? You have come to the conclusion that that's what you want to do, right? You're not in this kind of limbo. Should I pay off debt? Should I invest? Should I not? So we're not having that kind of a discussion today. This is purely for people who have come to the conclusion, yes, Denzel, this is my goal this year. I want to pay off massive amounts of debts. I want to create the strategy to remove as much debt as humanly possible. And I need the accountability. I need the education. I need the wisdom. I need the support. I need the training. I need it all. This video is exactly for you, okay? And then for those that have been following me for a while now and your clients, this is a refresher. This is a reminder, right? Be sure to be booking calls with me one-to-one. Make sure you're tapped in. Make sure you're being held accountable, right? Take advantage of me, right? I am a resource. I'm an asset, especially if you paid money to work with me one-to-one. And it's been a year since we had a phone call, or 6 months since we had a phone call, or 2 years. What's so interesting, and it happens like clockwork, the month of January, February, and March, I find myself connecting or reconnecting with clients that I haven't spoken with in maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years. And it's for a number of different reasons. Sometimes it's literally because they just were not ready when they first signed up with me. So they were like, hey, I respect your work. I want to lock you in at the price that you're offering now. I'm just not ready to work with you. My head's not here. I just got a divorce. I just lost a spouse, or, there was a death in the family, and I'm just not, like, my headspace is just not there yet. That's one aspect. The second is we started working together. And when you first signed up in 2018, 2019, 2020, you were doing awesome. Things were going great. And once I got you out of that initial desperate position that you were in financially, and you were like, I need help. Once I got you out of there into independence, what tends to happen is when we don't continue to hold ourselves accountable, we think we have all this wisdom. We think we're so smart that we can just all of a sudden continue to do these strategies, these financial principles and strategies all on our own, right? But not realizing, hey, for the last 45 years, for the last 25 years, you were living this way in debt. And you've only been working with me for 1 year, 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And we had tremendous results, not knocking that down. We've been doing awesome together. You're making all this progress. You're saving all this money on interest. You're getting all this cash flow back. But mind you, and I would warn my clients, I'd say, hey, you're going to get to a point where you'll feel like I've taught you everything you need to know. And then you're going to stop booking calls with me because you're an independent man, woman, husband, wife, and you're going to go off and do great things. But I want to warn you that at this level, this is a level you've never reached before. This comes with new problems. This comes with new temptations. This comes with new deceptions, new manipulations that you may not be ready for. All I'm saying, keep me in mind. Be sure that when you get to this level of, say, debt-free, right? This is a new level that many of you watching have never actually experienced before. And so the common theme for those watching and catching the replay, when you decided to become debt-free and you decided to go on this financial freedom journey and this financial independence journey, understand that if you've never been debt-free before, and then you get there with these new strategies that you learn from this channel and maybe other channels, right? From my coaching and maybe someone else's coaching. And you successfully got there. You became debt-free. You've got triple the amount of cash flow than when you first started. Your income's higher, your expenses are down. Life is great. I warn you of the new problems you're going to face. Okay? These problems can be things like trauma, past trauma that you've gone through in your life, and you are now in unfamiliar territory. You're a debt-free man, you're a debt-free woman, you're a debt-free household. You are now in unfamiliar territory. You are prone, you are vulnerable to being attacked in many different ways, spiritually, financially, emotionally, like all the different ways. And if you haven't settled or dealt with past trauma in your life around money or around spiritual matters, financial matters, all the different things, okay? You may find yourself going back into debt, unknowingly. And then you're hitting me up 2 years later, now it's 2025, you're like, Denzel, I over-leveraged my HELOC, I wasn't following your rules, I did not borrow, 2/3, I max funded this, and I got involved in this scam over here, I got abused over here. I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, I wish I would have been in contact with you before, because I would have been able to point out new things that we just didn't have conversations about when you were at this level, because it wasn't necessary to have it, right? So with that being said, let's dive right into the material for today, okay? And just to confirm, I got a comment here saying we still live. We are, as far as I know. Everything looks good. I got 37 people watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. We got 11 likes so far, 37 people watching. I would appreciate a like for sure. Okay, that always helps. All right, so here we go. It's very important to know your four major numbers, okay? This is the net amount of money you take home after tax, total amount of expenses, include debt payments in this line of expenses. When you're getting your four major numbers, right? Your expenses is everything. Everything and anything that leaves your checking account. So that's savings, tithing, investing, giving, living expenses, operating expenses, and debt obligations, debt payments. So make sure you're putting that there. Don't leave that out. And then this debt number is just the total amount of debt that you owe, right? And then your cash flow is the money left over. After all your expenses are taken care of, what is the amount of cash flow or money that has not been purposed yet? So cash flow essentially is money that hasn't been given a purpose yet. And we're going to give that money purpose. We're going to be intentional with what we do with that money. It's extremely important, okay? Four major numbers. What I wrote here are all the debt payoff strategies that exist in the marketplace today. If you were to research any of these words, right, you'll either come across my channel or other people's channel, and they'll go deep into one or more of these different topics. What I'm doing here for you today is taking all that public information, consolidating it into these different categories to really help you make the best decision with which route you want to go in terms of paying off your debts. Okay, so these are debt payoff strategies that involve not increasing your income and not making changes to your lifestyle by any means. This is just simply looking at, once we get your numbers, hey, this is how much money I make, this is how much money I spend, and this is my leftover cash flow. And so the strategy is literally just going to look at that in terms of what I laid out here, how you can go about doing it. There are external factors once you've chosen the strategy you want to go with. And by the way, there's 39 people watching here, and I'll have you take a look at the board again of the different debt elimination strategies. If you already know what strategy you're currently doing to pay off your debts, assuming that you're someone that is in the process of paying off debt, that is the goal that you set out for 2025, or a goal you've already been on for a few years, please comment what debt payoff strategy you're currently doing, or a number of them, right? So you're not limited to one strategy, okay? So again, if you're here watching live, there's now 44 people watching. If you know the debt payoff strategy you're currently doing, comment below what that is, or if it's a multitude of a combination of strategies, go ahead and comment that as well. I want to get an idea, of what I'm working with in the room right now, and that'll help me deliver really good value for you today. Okay? So please answer that for me in the comments, as many of you as you can. I'm going to go through the debt payoff strategies, right? And this is a nice little summary here. And again, this is strategies that don't involve increasing income, because that is an external factor, right? If you decide, I want to increase my income by picking up a side gig or starting a business, then it doesn't matter what strategy you picked, right? Because that way of thinking can be applied to any one of these or all of these strategies. Does that make sense? It can be applied to any strategy. So that's an external factor. I don't want to use that to make one strategy look better than the other. Does that make sense? So that's an external factor, increasing income and reducing your lifestyle expenses, right? So you're altering the way that you live for a period of time to achieve a particular result faster, right? So we'll write external factors that improve you getting out of debt faster, okay? And the main ones, the most common things we're familiar with is, oh, let me just get my income up. The more money I bring in, right, the more cash flow I'll have. If I maintain my lifestyle, increase income, I have more money to work with to eliminate debts. That makes sense, right? So that's not necessarily a strategy. I would just say like that's just an external factor decision that will improve the strategy that you're doing, but it doesn't make one strategy better than the other, okay? So increasing income, and then reducing expenses, right? I'm sure you can all agree with me. One of the major issues in America today, if you're an American citizen watching, the thing that majority of Americans struggle with is consumerism, okay? You've been living your entire life from the moment you got a job. You've been in, even before you got a job, the way your parents operated. And then when you got a job and started working and building your own family and life, you've been indoctrinated your entire life to be a spender, to be a consumer, okay? So when you decide to become debt-free, you're also making these additional internal decisions inside that are going to alter your life for the rest of your life and generations to come. It's really insane. It's really cool to actually see it mapped out in your own life. And that's what I've been able to do for the last 7 years with folks, is literally mapping out that journey, that immediate decision that we decided to make this change, but did not realize that one decision caused a ripple of other decisions to occur, right? So it's pretty incredible. And one of those ripple effects is the way you consume, right? The way you consume on this planet. Most, if not all of my cases that I've worked on, there was some aspect of reducing lifestyle expenses, some aspect of it, whether it was influenced by me, the coach, the trainer, the educator, or brought up by them. They're like, hey, Denzel, we're spending about $1,000 a month eating out, and groceries, eating out, and entertainment, and so we want to get a grip on this. We know that we could easily recapture like $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year on that. And just by doing that would get us out of debt 1 year faster if we just made that one tweak, right? And we're able to like mathematically see that, which is so cool, right? I geek out over this. It's so cool when you can make that internal decision where it's like, okay, I don't have to consume at the level I'm consuming. For what reasons many of us are not able to answer. And it's usually the defense of why you wouldn't want to change your American consumerism ways is because of some kind of financial trauma in your life. It's usually what it is. Some kind of financial trauma, some kind of way of your upbringing, the way your mom, the way your dad, but both of them lived, the way you've been operating for 2, 3, 4, 5 decades, right? And then finally saying, you know what, I need to make a change, okay? That ripple effect, one of those things, is the way you decide to not be an American that suffers from consumerism, okay? So consumerism is a huge factor in eliminating debt as an external factor, but not necessarily a strategy, okay? So just understanding that, increasing income, reducing expenses, pretty incredible stuff, right? So here are your debt payoff strategies. You've got debt snowball, debt avalanche, cash flow index, using a whole life insurance contract via the cash value, 401k/retirement accounts, take via loans, actually loaning against investment accounts, right, or margin loans to pay off debt. And then the one that I'm most popular for on YouTube, velocity banking, okay? So these are all of your what? Debt payoff strategies that exist that don't involve increasing income or reducing expenses, right? The only other strategy that you could make an argument for is the strategy of increasing income, but then I would simply say that's an external factor. Anyone can decide to do that and still do debt snowball or still do avalanche or cash flow index, right? Velocity banking, okay? Before I go on, let me read some more comments that came in answering the question I had before, and look how cool this is. So you're in a place, you're in a safe place on YouTube right now. This is a very, very safe YouTube channel where if you've got an idea, a thought, a question, I'm not going to rip you a new one, so to speak, okay? I'm not going to shoot you down. I'm not going to call you dumb, stupid, arrogant, ignorant. I'm simply going to challenge your way of thinking. I'm gonna ask more questions to help you make the best financial decision. And whether you choose to do something that I teach on my channel or not, I'm still going to be your biggest fan, because you making the decision to do something with your personal finances is better than nothing. So that's a start, okay? Then it's just a matter of efficiency, optimization. Hey, how do we make this better, right? And that's where you bring a financial expert in, a coach, a mentor, accountability partner in that sense, okay? So let me just see, and thank you all that were just saying congratulations. Congratulations, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm gonna run through those comments. Shout out to Travis Peters, how you doing? Good to see you, my friend. We're due for a call for sure. Bianca's got a question. I have a PLOC. Okay, so Bianca, hold me accountable. You'll be the first question that I ask once I get done with my session here. Okay. All right. Let's see. And then Pat, I'll ask that question. That'll be the second question. Okay, so here we go. So Tracy says velocity banking. That's the strategy she's currently doing. Okay. Bianca, I'm using velocity banking. Velocity banking with cash flow index. Okay. So they're doing the velocity banking strategy, and the way they decide which debts they're going to pay off first, which order, they're using cash flow index. Okay. Sherilyn says variety, but that's not an answer. You gotta give me an answer. Okay, Raul, that's a better answer. Raul says none. I'm not using any of these strategies, right? So you might be, well, Raul sounds like a familiar name. I feel like I've worked with a Raul before. So we're gonna have to get clarity on that for sure. Okay, so use debt snowball to start, then velocity banking with cash flow index, now IBC. So there's a graduating approach there. Cassandra says velocity banking along with cash flow index. Income, PLOC, then expenses will, come out of PLOC. Perfect. So she's using a personal line of credit to practice the velocity banking strategy and using cash flow index to tell her which debts to pay off first, right, in which order. So Bobo, velocity banking. Bobby, velocity banking using high limit credit card. Okay, so using velocity banking with a credit card only, very easily this person could increase optimization and efficiency by adding in maybe a potential personal line of credit or a home equity line of credit. Okay. Variety, not an answer. Rod, avalanche, and velocity banking. So he's using velocity banking concept, and he's using debt avalanche to determine which debts to pay off first. Okay. Debt snowball. Next question I have for you all. If you do not know any one of these debt elimination strategies, Comment below which ones you don't know about, you're not familiar with, you're still new to, you're still grasping, right? Comment that for me while I read through these. Jared says, using HELOC to pay off mortgage, remove property tax off escrow to pay that part on mortgage principal. Wonderful, wonderful. Bianca says, I need clarity on cash flow index. Wonderful, we'll get into that. Scott, welcome. Velocity Banking. Velocity, credit card, life insurance. So Velocity Banking using your credit card, and then you've got a life insurance strategy incorporated with that. Okay, also working a side job to accelerate payoff. Cool. Lance says PLOC, wonderful. Okay. Cash flow index. Okay, yeah, so Anthony's helping out, answer some questions for me. This is great. I've been watching for a few years doing the framework and now in the process of applying for a home equity line of credit. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so that looks good for now. Let me stop there. Let me share the definitions of these different strategies the best way I can explain it. Okay. And let me share my screen. So here we go. Hopefully you can see this. Okay. And I'm going to wait for my screen to update here. I want to see if it does it. Make sure you can see this nice and clearly. And I'll wait for a comment as well. I know there's about a 15-second delay. No, I don't like the way that is. There we go. Now that is cleaner. Let me see. Okay, it looks like we're better. I don't see a comment yet, but I do know that there's a delay. So I completely understand that. So this should be nice and clean. You should be able to see debt elimination strategies. So I'm going to begin. So debt snowball is taking the lowest debt balance to the highest. So when you're looking at your personal finances, you basically want to look at every single debt that you have in your name, right, or spouse, right, as a household, and you want to see which debts are the lowest all the way to the highest, and that's how you're going to rank your debts. So the advantage of debt snowball in that regard is it's technically the simplest strategy on the board of debt payoff strategies. It's the simplest one. You're only focused on the balance. Okay? The cons here is mathematically that might not make sense all the time, right? But math is not necessarily a factor in the debt snowball strategy. It's all about momentum, confidence, early victories, simplicity, right? It's a paradigm shift for some. And the advantage with debt snowball is it's one of the longest standing strategies, proven. It is tested and proven under many different economic environments. And debt snowball has been practiced by probably, I'd say, millions, tens of millions of people, hundreds of millions, more than likely, across the world, honestly. So that's another factor, is debt snowball can be practiced anywhere in the world, right? It's not limited to a particular jurisdiction or way of a specific banking system. So it's got a long track record of success, right? And so therefore, debt snowball is often a very attractive way to pay off debt. Simple. Just involves making extra payments towards your lowest debt balance. And then once that lowest debt balance is paid off, you take that payment and you apply it to the very next debt and you keep it moving. Okay? Debt avalanche is a little more specific. right? Slightly, but also pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? That avalanche focuses on the highest interest rate debt that you have and goes to lowest interest rate, right? So you might have a car loan with a balance of only 10,000 and the interest rate is, I don't know, 3-4%, and then you've got a credit card at 15,000 with a 25% interest rate. If we're just looking at those two debts, that avalanche would say pay the credit card off first, then the car. That snowball would say pay the car off first, then the credit card, because the car, right, has the lower balance, right, 10K as opposed to 15. All right, so pretty straightforward. Cash flow index. This is where we get a little more tactical, right? Now we're starting to focus less on the emotional benefits, right, or psychological benefits. Now we're starting to focus on math. It's a pure math problem. So if you're the type of person that's less emotionally tapped in when it comes to your money, right? It's less of an emotional decision, it's more of a mathematical decision. And I know typically amongst majority of my clients, especially with men, typically we're solving a math problem. When I work with moms, it's usually an emotional mathematical problem we're trying to solve, right? Just makes sense, right? Just understanding the difference between men and women, right? So when I talk to most men, it's a mathematical problem that they're trying to solve. Denzel, what's the fastest way to get out of debt? Every now and then I do get moms and women that are also mathematically minded, and I do attract those as well just because of the way that I present myself on YouTube. I tend to be less emotional and more tactically, mathematically involved in whatever strategy I'm trying to solve for, right? So cash flow index takes the balance owed on a debt. So it doesn't matter how you order your debts, okay? You just make sure you got all your debts lined up, and you just start with the amount owed divided by the monthly payment, the monthly minimum payment, not the payment you're making, right? So if you're making a higher payment than the required, don't use the higher payment. Use what's actually required to pay that debt each month. Balance owed divided by monthly payment equals cash flow index score. And you go from lowest number to highest number, okay? So it might tell you to pay off a credit card first, then a car, then a this, then a personal loan, then jump back to student loan, then finally the mortgage, right? So it's always going to be purely based off the lowest number, right, all the way to the highest number. That's the order in which you'd pay off debt, right? So moving right along, we got velocity banking. This is like I think my favorite way of explaining the strategy in like 2 sentences or less. But being able to leverage velocity banking is being able to leverage a line of credit to accelerate / consolidate debt into the line of credit, right, at a cheaper cost of money per day. Then using all of your income at the same time to pay off the line of credit fast. Rinse and repeat, okay? Velocity banking, I could spend hours and hours and hours, which I've had hundreds of hours in case studies explaining the strategy, and it takes people a while to get it because it is way more of a mathematical problem we're solving for. It involves more thinking, right? It involves taking the time to get really educated on your specific scenario while using other case studies for reference, right? Velocity banking does not have an extremely long track record of success. I'd give it maybe 20, 30 years, right, of a track record of success. Whereas Something like Debt Snowball or maybe Debt Avalanche or Cash Flow Index probably has a 50+ year track record, maybe even longer if we're looking at the whole world, right? You could say Debt Snowball, before it was called Debt Snowball, was the way to pay off debt, right? So it's got a longer track record, more history of success, whereas velocity banking is being taught by a bunch of people that typically don't have a whole lot of financial professionalism in the traditional sense, right? You're not typically learning from someone that went to an Ivy League school or someone that got a college degree or someone that, has a PhD in mathematics. You're typically not learning velocity banking from that kind of person. So it also adds another layer of risk, another layer of uncertainty, doubt, fear, right? Skepticism. Because if you look at the top people promoting velocity banking today on YouTube alone, literally those people, and I'm talking about myself, are people that don't have financial professionalism in the traditional sense, right? I'm not a Series 66 license. I didn't go to Ivy League school. I didn't get a mathematics degree. I didn't get a degree in finance. I don't have any of those. What would we look at as credibility, right? Or experience. I don't have any of that, right? I'm basically self-taught. And then you look at people like Christy Van or the Kwok brothers, right? Or Matthew Pillmore. Like, as far as I know, they did not go to college to get a finance degree. They did not become a financial advisor. They did not, study mathematics, right? So again, it has its pros and cons there that you have to kind of weed through to really get to the core math of what's happening. But those two sentences right there really summarize, I think, the strategy in a really, really good way and can be used as a foundation. The next one is infinite banking. Okay? Now, infinite banking today can be described 100 different ways, just like velocity banking can. Because within velocity banking, you've got the general sense of the term that I just gave you, but there's like 25 plus different ways of incorporating the strategy, right? Same with infinite banking. Infinite banking, right, is my best way of summarizing this, is leveraging a properly structured whole life insurance contract to save money tax-free on a guaranteed basis and have liquidity via the cash value, which is a living benefit, where you borrow money against your policy to pay your debts off over time and build wealth simultaneously. That's a mouthful, right? Comment below if you agree. That's a bit of a mouthful. There's a lot that's going on there, right? So infinite banking is involving some kind of a product called whole life, and it has to be properly structured, and you have to be saving money into there. You have to be contributing money into the account. The money's going to grow, but then at the same time, you've got this living benefit of which you can use to borrow against. And if our goal is to pay off debts, you can now use an asset to pay your debts off while simultaneously building wealth in that time frame of becoming debt-free and beyond, right? So those are the most popular ways of getting out of debt, right? And let me go ahead and stop sharing and take it to the board again. So hopefully that was really, really helpful for you. And if you want access to my slides, just reach out to me directly if you're a client. And then if you're just a fan, you want to see that entire presentation I did recently at an event I spoke at, I'd be happy to give it to you. Just ask, right? Email me directly and ask for it. Happy to give that, okay? As a gift, okay? So now, gave you the different payoff strategies. The 401k/retirement accounts, pretty simple. It's just you're looking at your 401k, 403b, TSP plans, and you're seeing how much you could borrow out of there, right? What's the max? What's the loan interest rate? And it's more of a math problem there, where you can essentially borrow money out of an investment account, right, and move or consolidate debts that you're already paying interest on. And instead of paying interest to the institutions and the lenders, you'd be paying interest back to yourself. Okay? So that's that's another efficient strategy to consider, something that could be done, right? Where again, let's say you got 500,000 in a 401k, you're able to borrow 50k is your max, let's say. And you take that 50k and you pay off 2 cars, a couple credit cards, and the amount of cash flow that you gain becomes the payment that you start to pay back to yourself. So you wipe out, you cancel all the interest that you're paying to your car dealerships and credit card institutions, and you're rerouting all that interest to your retirement account. So what happens typically is there isn't a cash flow gain, and if there is, it's really small because the repayment of the 401k is not set by you, it's set by the 401k loan provider, right? Sometimes there's a fee, if I'm not mistaken, there's a fee involved to borrow your money, plus the interest rate that you're being charged is interest that you're paying back to yourself, right? But still, nonetheless, it's an interest rate which results in a higher monthly repayment back to you. So it's not money you're going to see, right? So when you repay, so if you were to consolidate debts and your goal is not just to become debt free, but you're also trying to increase cash flow to solve for a different purpose. And let's say that purpose does not involve adding more money to these qualified retirement accounts because maybe you don't love them or you don't like the way they're performing. You may not want to borrow from that because you'd be locking up all that money again, only able to access it at a later point in time. So, but again, it is a strategy. It is something to consider. I've worked with many clients that have done 401k loans to do many different things with it, and it's really just a math problem that we're essentially solving for, okay? So now, let me give you some facts, right? Some ranges, right? These are details that I pulled off of the internet regarding interest rates in 2024 across the board for different debts. Okay, so I want to direct your attention to the right side of the board here. I started looking up average rates on debts in 2024. We're at the top of the year, so these numbers will likely change in 2025, no doubt. But nonetheless, it's really accurate, and if you don't agree, comment below and put the numbers that you think is more likely the case, okay? So I started looking up average rates on car loans, used cars, personal loans, credit cards, and mortgages, right? I forgot student loans. But these are your common debts, all right? Focusing on this community. We now have 60 plus people in the house. I want to hone in on you, right? So I'm taking general numbers here and now shrinking it down to just you, folks that are here watching and catching the replay, right? According to Google and my research, the average car loan for a brand new car in 2024 was anywhere from as low as 6.7%. These numbers, right, are for people with fantastic credit. So you'd have great credit to get a car loan at 6.7%, and that's the general sense. I understand that there's definitely people watching that maybe got a car loan in 2024 for 0%, you know, or 3 or 4 or 5, right? I totally get it, but this is looking at the general sense, and obviously focusing now on you, the community. This is what I see. I'm typically seeing with my new clients and people that are submitting their numbers to me, I'm seeing more these interest rates, 6, 7, 8, 9 is what I'm seeing. 6 to 9% for new cars. And used vehicles, I'm seeing 8, 9, 10, 11 plus, okay? So Google told me 9.63 to 21% on used vehicles. And obviously this high rate assumes that the person that got that rate has terrible credit, really, really bad credit. Personal loans in my community, I'm seeing nothing below 10% typically on a personal loan. So that's Prosper, Lending Tree, Citizens. Like I'm seeing a lot of those loans come through. Cabbage, right? All those loans, and I'm always seeing 10+%. Credit cards, I don't think anybody would disagree with me. Even if you have great credit, you're at interest rates between like 20 and 30% plus or minus. And then mortgages. We saw mortgage rates go above 7% last year. Like no doubt, like there's people out there with 7+% mortgage rates. Compared to some clients that I have back in 2020, 2021 that have a 2.9% mortgage, right? And they're sitting pretty and they're pretty happy, okay? But there are a lot of folks that have mortgages between 6 and 7% right now, a lot. And again, honing in on you, this community, I'm seeing a lot of you with mortgage rates around 5 and 6%. Some are 7, and the only reason why again, my audience, my clients, whenever I'm seeing above 7%, typically that's a rental property that they had, some sort of investment, okay? So seeing these rates and looking at the debt payoff strategies, the ones that are simple and the ones that are more complicated, right? I think there's a world where we can incorporate simplicity and strategy into what you're trying to do. 2025, honestly, I already started this journey. I want to say early 2024, maybe 2023. I started making more content about how to combine strategies. The very first time I did that was when I made videos talking about velocity banking and infinite banking combined. The velocity banking concept, prior to me getting on the internet, had been around for, say, 20 years. The infinite banking concept, prior to me getting on YouTube, had been around for 40 plus years, I'd say. And say YouTube started after 06, I think, 07, something like that. I don't know when YouTube started. Like, I think it started in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. But I'd say that in all of YouTube's history, across the entire internet, prior to 2018, I've never seen anyone post a video about velocity banking and infinite banking together, how those things can actually work, right? So when I put out that video, I got a lot of views, a lot of attention, a lot of interest. People were like, oh, I know velocity, I've been doing that, and I just started learning about infinite banking, or I've been doing infinite banking for 5 years and I just learned about velocity. Can these things come together? And I was essentially putting a theory out, right? I was submitting a theory to the public. I say, hey, is this possible? Right? Like, here's a case study of velocity banking, infinite banking coming together. I think these strategies complement one another. I think there's a lot of uniqueness in this. I think this needs to be tested. And so I went on that journey, testing it out for myself, with clients, and got a ton of results. That then led me to also make content that would reach out to the other side of people that may be against velocity banking or against infinite banking, because most of the content, when talking about eliminating debt, whoever the educator is, typically they're focusing on one thing. They're like, do debt snowball and forget everything else. Or they're like, do velocity banking and forget everything else. Or they're like, do infinite banking and forget everything else, right? It kind of like one way, right? And even if they say like they're not, most of the time, they're still like zoned in onto that one path. Maybe there's a couple ways to get to that path, but there's still the one path, right? They don't incorporate other methods and how these things complement each other. So then I started making videos about velocity banking and debt snowball together, because I used to make videos saying velocity banking versus debt snowball, why you should do velocity banking over debt snowball, why velocity banking is better than debt snowball. So I used to make a lot of videos like that, sort of creating like a little bit of, combativeness, right? Competitive spirit. And then I was like, well, what would it look like if I'm working with a client that knows and understands debt snowball and they've been practicing it well? And what if, without abandoning those strategies and principles, that we actually use that to elevate velocity banking and use velocity banking to elevate debt snowball? Is there a way for those two to come together? And that's where a lot of my most recent case studies have been focused on that, which is, hey, instead of trying to compete and prove why this is better than that, couldn't you just combine it all together and get the best of all situations? So with that being said, showing you what rates look like in 2024 and kind of how they've been looking like going into 2025. And then we come down here to the bottom right, which are some questions that I want you to sit with, and I think will really help you develop that financial foundation framework that I'm looking to build with you before we actually implement the strategy. So implementing the strategy is the last step, okay? Too often, many of you are trying to do the strategy of velocity banking, let's say, without doing the pregame work. And you'll hear me preach this all the time, where I'm like, go check out velocity banking pregame work. If you're not going to hire me or Christy Van or Matthew Pillmore or Kwok Brothers or Replace Your University or any other financial professional that's teaching velocity banking in their practice, if you're not going to hire us one-to-one to work with you, and you're going to DIY style, and your version of DIY is watching 3 videos and then going to get a HELOC or a PLOC, you are in for a treat, my friend. You are in for a treat. And you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and it's going to cost you a lot of money. And then when you look at the math, you would have been better off not doing the strategy so many times, right? Like 9 times out of 10. You're better off not doing the strategy if you don't fully understand what you're getting into before you do it. I think there's a ton of value in doing velocity banking pregame work, which is why I made a playlist called Velocity Banking Pregame Work. And when you go through that pregame work, I can help people save so much money before we even implement the strategy that by the time you implement it, you've got the nitrous boost, right? You've got all systems go, right? You're able to just floor it and not worry about burnout, right? Not worry about spinning out at all. Like, you're able to just go forward because you have so many parameters and protections built in place for you to successfully implement the strategy. So these questions I want you to sit with, I think will help you also come to a clear decision how I want to move forward. What's your beliefs about money and debt, right? What are some facts about money? What are the current facts? You got to separate beliefs and facts, right? What are the current facts you understand and know about money and debt, okay? And what are some beliefs you have about money? For example, if it is your belief that you want to be debt-free because you never want to use debt again, that is a strong belief. You're saying, Denzel, not only do I want to be debt-free, I never want to use debt again, okay? So you are throwing out facts, which is not necessarily a bad thing, okay? But you just have to understand that you can't let the facts manipulate that belief. If you believe for your household, for your life, for your family, that you want to be debt-free and never use debt again. You don't want to look at it. You don't want to touch it. You don't want to get anywhere near debt. You need to have a set of morals, values, principles that you abide by. Because if you do not, you're going to find yourself touching things that you shouldn't be touching, right? You're going to find yourself putting your hand on the stove to see if it's hot, and it's freaking hot, okay? So you have to really get clear about what are your beliefs about money. I want you to comment some beliefs you have about money. These are just a standard statement, right? Like if I walked into your house and you had a statement right when I walked in or right on your front door that told me your belief about money, what would you say? Right? So comment below, what is one belief you have about money? Or comment one belief you have about debt. Okay? What do you believe about debt? Don't give me a fact. Give me your personal belief. What do you believe about money and about debt? Right? So I'm already seeing one come in, one comment that it's hard to make a lot of money. Okay, that is a belief, right? Money doesn't come easy. Okay? That's a belief. I want to see some more comments. What is a belief you have about money? What is a belief you have about debt? I want to see some comments coming in. Okay. Everyone is in debt. It's normal. Okay, that's another comment. Good, good, good. So I want to give you a chance to let those comments come in. And when you answer beliefs about money and debt, and you get facts about money and debt, that's going to help you build a strong financial foundation, right? And then from there, we'll be able to choose the strategy that best fits your needs, okay? That best fits your style of personal finance, the way that you currently operate. Okay, so I'm gonna give a few seconds to let folks comment, and then I'm gonna present a case study for you. Okay, give you a nice case study to work with. I think you'll enjoy. Let me make sure. Get this person. And if you're getting a ton of value, go ahead and hit the like button for me if it's your first time. Be sure to subscribe. We do tons of master classes on this channel. Lots of work that we've been putting in place. A lot of exciting things that we're doing, having a blast. All right, let me give some numbers here. These numbers are not too crazy. This is someone I'm working with that I really enjoyed having a nice conversation. This is a brand new client I'm working with. I'll give you some numbers. Got somebody making $6,931. Their expenses are $4,195.10. Total debt is $155,521.71. And we have a cash flow of $2,735.90. Okay? Pretty cool stuff. This person, married, 4 kids. And we are in the state of Iowa. Okay. Now, give me a second because I'm actually going to pull up their numbers and show some of the interest rates that they have on their debts, just so that we can get a little more context on what we're working with. So let me see if I can just pull that up for you all. Let me see. Okay. So we've got a personal loan at 6.97%. That's way below what the norm is. Okay. Now, reason for that is because the loan, the type of loan that they have, if I'm not mistaken, I have to verify. I do believe that was a 401k loan, if I'm not mistaken, or a loan that they've had for a number of years. Okay. So look what we got. We got two personal loans, both at 6.97%. One they owe $1,359.63 on. The other is $5,697.08. Okay. Payments 109, 62, 52, 91. Then we have a mortgage that they acquired way before 2024. And you're going to see where their mortgage is at. $142,285. $1,395 is the payment. 4.5% interest rate. Okay. And then they have a medical debt of $6,180. Payment is $270, no interest. All right. So this person came across my channel, learning about velocity banking, right? They were obtaining information about infinite banking as well, and they are wanting to implement potentially both strategies. Okay. They're thinking that, you know what, I think I want to put a life insurance policy in place. So they might want to consider, they do have a desire to pay off debt, but they also recognize that their debts are not hurting them financially speaking. They have healthy cash flows, right? Having $2,735.90 of cash flow every single month is way better than the majority of Americans that have under 500, right? So they're not doing too bad despite the debts that they currently have. So they're trying to process beliefs about money, facts about money, build a financial foundation. They have a pretty good financial foundation already. They're evaluating the different debt payoff strategies. And so when I come in, I start to point out specific numbers that if you're following along right now and you've got your numbers right next to you, right? You got your book open, you got your notes, okay? I want to help you see what I see and how I ask certain questions and figure out certain numbers to help me move forward in giving proper guidance to help people make the best decisions with their money. Okay, I want to give you that so that regardless of whether we work together one-to-one or not, that you'll still feel really equipped to build that initial financial foundation with confidence. And the goal on this YouTube channel, whether you're a client or not, is to have a strong financial foundation. It's less about how much money you make, right? Although making more money is awesome, but I would argue having a strong financial foundation is more important than the amount of money you make, because it's not about what you make, it's about what you keep and what you steward and how you use the money, okay? So I'm gonna go back to my question earlier about your belief about money, right? If I was to walk into your home or out on your front door or right when I walk in and the statement said something about the way you view money and that helped me understand you more, what would that statement be? Okay. Here's another strong belief. He says, I believe debt keeps you enslaved, right? So this would be a type of person, right? If he's looking at debt payoff strategies, right out the gate, we have to throw velocity banking out, regardless of whether the strategy can produce a better result for them, because their belief does not match the strategy. So here's something that I've learned after coaching over 1,000 plus families over the last 7+ years, is that belief matters more than the strategy. And this is coming from someone that is strategy focused, right? I am laser focused on providing the best ways for people to get out of debt, the most efficient ways for people to get out of debt, the most efficient ways to build your finances, have a better life. But I've learned over the years, regardless of how good, how clean, how awesome, the numbers, the blueprint, the accountability, like it don't matter. None of that matters if their belief doesn't match what they're doing, because now they're in a compromised position, right? Gentleman just got done saying, I believe debt keeps you enslaved. So if he hires me and I start teaching him how to use debt to get out of debt and how to use debt to make more income, even though I'm illustrating fantastic results, he'll never actually do it to the full capacity because he's morally compromised. And if he does move forward with it, he's morally compromised. He's not going to feel satisfied even when he gets the results, because he feels like he's going to be, enslaved, his own words, right? Which then creates a different kind of problem where it's like, even if I help that guy become a millionaire by leveraging debt and offsetting interest and doing all these wonderful things, he'll probably be miserable and stressed out of his mind, versus I need to just stick with cash flow index, debt avalanche, or debt snowball, right? Throw velocity banking out the door, throw borrowing from a 401k out the door, and a whole life insurance contract. Just it doesn't make sense, right? So I'm not going to read the funny ones, right? Let's see. Money is a tool, and we use tools for their purpose. Debt is just an aspect of life. How much we are in is just part of living. Okay, it's an interesting belief. So I believe debt, right? This gentleman right here, I believe debt keeps people enslaved, right? But the belief about money is, I believe money is a great tool to help / bless others and do kingdom work. Wonderful. Wonderful. So maybe if I'm working with him, it's less velocity, less infinite, less leveraging. It's more snowball, avalanche, cash flow index, and then maybe decreasing lifestyle expenses and increasing income. And I'm going to get a better result than if I try to convince him to do velocity banking. Does that make sense? Sherilyn says, I was raised to believe this, but no longer believe it. You will be in debt until the day you die. Okay, so that's good context. Money is all around us. You just have to believe and get it. Okay? Unless you know someone, it's hard to get a good job. Okay? Let's see. There is good debt and bad debt. All right. Let's see. Let me see if anybody else said anything. Okay, no. So we got good debt and bad debt. All right. So regarding beliefs about money with this scenario, this case study I'm sharing with you here, this person is perfectly fine with leveraging debt. So they value leverage. They value leverage. They're willing to service debt. Not a problem. Okay, they're willing to service debt. They're willing to leverage to obtain a particular result. So now here are some numbers that I run to help me help this person. As I look at their current debt coverage on the monthly payments that they have, right? So they are coming out of pocket 109.62, 52.91. We got 1,395, 270. So 1,827 and 53 cents. Okay. So they believe in using debt. They believe in leveraging debt. They've done it before. They do have a desire to pay off debt, but they're willing to incorporate a strategy that would help them create wealth and pay off debt. And that's when they stumble across whole life insurance. So now we want to figure out, how can one go about potentially incorporating, say, the infinite banking strategy plus maybe velocity plus cash flow index, like combining these things in to figure out how to go about eliminating these debts and still create the wealth that they want. They do have 4 kids, so they're also risk adverse. All right, so that's another thing. They are risk adverse. They're willing to do anything to make the strategy work, but they're not willing to, go to Vegas and gamble a bunch of money. They're not willing to, invest in a brand new business they never heard of, right? Or start or get recruited into an MLM company, right? Put a bunch of money behind that and start selling something, right? So they're not willing to throw their money in the market, okay? But they are willing to do things to improve whatever strategy we do pick. So risk adverse, value leverage, willing to service debt, not a problem. They're not stressed out. When we were talking, they weren't stressed out about this debt, right? They already had a plan in place. So let's look at some other numbers. We know that 1,827.53 is their debt obligation to service these debts. And we have, let me see their age real quick. So we're 36 years old is our age. So we do have time on our side. They are in their prime years of producing income. So they're not slowing down, they're speeding up, right? They're in the construction industry, okay? They make pretty good money, not too bad. Let's look at this cash flow left over. 2,735 with 90 cents times 12 in a year. Here's how much cash flow they produce. $32,830.80. Take their monthly payments, 1,827.53 times 12, $21,930.36. So they've got what? Almost $22,000 a year that's going towards debt payoff, and they have $32,830.80 of free cash flow. Okay. If we were to add those two numbers, $32,830.80, that's $54,761.16. So you could do this for yourself in your own finances. Take your cash flow times 12, take the total amount of payment obligations that you have, times that by 12, add the two, see what your number is. So you got $54,761.16. If you were to take that number and then divide it by the amount of debt that you have, $155,521.71 divided by $54,761.16. So it's safe to say that in this case, should take them about, because this is assuming all interest, right? So 2.8 years, but I'm just going to add, like a half a year to a year. So very conservative, I can say 3.8 years or less debt-free, right? That's what? Making extra payments. And the way we went about doing that to get to that 3.8 years could have been snowball, avalanche, cash flow index. They probably all would have produced the same result. But if we would have went the life insurance route, it could potentially take longer to get out of debt, but they would be creating more options and creating more wealth than the person that just pays off debt. Okay? So, taking a look at the discussion of whole life insurance, right? Because this is what they're looking into incorporating into their finance, even though they're in debt, right? They've got enough cash flow to say, okay, before I send this money in a year directly to the debt, how can I maybe put this into an asset that could grow and then borrow from there and pay off debt? What would that look like? What could that potentially look like? So now, what I'm going to share with you are some life insurance designs that I built out for this particular client. Okay. And let me see. I don't want to expose their name. So let me just download it before I reveal it to you guys. Bear with me. I'm going to rename this. How are we doing so far? Is this stuff very helpful? Okay, again, for some of you, this is all refresher. This is good information. Others, you're like, might be getting overwhelmed. But it's good because you can watch this on replay, right? And just kind of break this up into different segments that you can cover. All right, so let me know. Let's do this. All right, I'm going to share with you a life insurance illustration that I'm currently working on with this client. Then I'm going to zoom in. You guys should be able to see this nicely, right? So we got a premium total pay-in of $15,000 a year is our number, with the ability to do more, right? They can pay in the range of a little over $27,000 a year or more. I'll have to confirm on that. But this just shows what it would look like if they saved $15,000 a year first into a life insurance policy, and then over time used that asset to then pay off debt at a later point in time. So what's happening is they're using the methodology of saving money, and we can also say investing money, because not 100% of our cash flow is going to go into this policy, but we got a good percentage. And it looks like in the first year, we get a death benefit of $1.5 million. We have a total cash value of roughly $10,900. And that would be the method of just simply saving money first. They would continue to pay their debts, their monthly payments, just the monthly minimums, but they're not accelerating their debt, okay? They're not accelerating their debt. So now, let me create some space at the bottom here. So I gave you the numbers that I typically look at to evaluate the timeline if they were to just simply pay off their debt early, so they can see what they're working with. 3.8 years or less is like the range I'm giving, right? Total estimation. Cash flow times 12. Payments times 12. Add those two. This is how much money they would be sending to debt. So what you're doing is you're taking the dollars that you would say no longer be sending to debt directly and say, okay, what are we going to do with that money to increase the value of it so that 3.8 years from now, or less, preferably, that you could have all this debt eliminated, but then still have an entire asset to work with, right? So when coming up with a amount to fund into their life insurance policy, this is like the other math that we're figuring out, because I'm also looking at, again, like they're willing to leverage, but we want to be safe. We don't want to take on too much risk. We don't want to put too much cash flow into one asset, right? So what I like to do is take the total cash flow in a year, times it by 2/3. That gives me $21,668. So I know very comfortably this person could save $15,000 a year, which is about under 50% of their cash flow. So you got, so I'll do this so that I show it on the board. 21,668, 32 cents. So I showed saving $15K a year in a policy. I also did a design on the person's wife. So this is on husband. Then I also showed a small policy, $5,000 on wife. And what this is solving for is a multitude of things. First of all, we get a death benefit, 1.5 million. They do have 4 kids. Something happens to him on his journey of paying off debt, and he was sending all his cash flow to eliminate the debt, but then passes away. Now the wife is left with all the debt, loss of income, and nothing to replace his income. So there's a risk there that when you're deciding on which debt strategy to go with and your foundation and how you're going to proceed with your finances, something as simple as that could be the different decision factor that you make before pressing forward with eliminating debt. You're like, you know what, let me get some life insurance first, where in the event something happens to me, my family can pay off all the debts and be able to replace my income for a period of time, right? So give me a second. I'm going to pull up wife's policy that I designed as well. Just want to look at what I did there. I'm just going to write the numbers out, make it easy. So it was $5,000 a year. Death benefit on the wife is $500K. Okay, he makes more money, so we put more life insurance on him, right? That's what makes more sense typically when you're doing death benefit planning, that such. You look at who is the higher income earner. So here's what's laid out. We got $20K going into life insurance, let's say over the next 3 to 4 years. All right, let's just say over the next 4 years. The difference between $32,830 and 80 cents and 20 grand is what? $12,830.80. What do we do with that money? We could either A, drive those funds into these 2 policies, or B, this money could be invested, right? So we could be investing the difference that we're going to be saving, and then what's left over was $12,830.80, and they're going to invest it and hopefully earn a higher rate of return than the average cost of money that they're servicing, preferably is what I would be shooting for, right? So if I'm going to invest this $12,000, I want to be earning at least double what I'm paying in interest over here, so that when that money grows 4 years from now, plus this money over here, I have options as to how I can eliminate the debt. Or option 3 is they take that difference of the $12,830.80, right? $12,830.80 divided by 12. So it's about $1,000 a month. And they could use that $1,000 a month to make extra payments toward their debt, right? So here's where layering starts to begin. So far, here's what I gave you in terms of how I think when I'm looking at your numbers. I got the 4 major numbers. I'm presenting all the debt payoff strategies that you may be interested in, and we're going to look at it thoroughly. What helps me mark off certain strategies is based off your current beliefs and facts about money and the financial foundation that we want to build or maybe already have built. I know that this person has a financial foundation built. They don't need confidence or momentum to go down their debt freedom path, so I already eliminated that snowball and that avalanche. They were already learning, getting educated, and interested in this conversation about life insurance. And I think they already knew a little bit about cash flow index. So if we were to look at, which debts would I hit first, let's take a look. So $5,697 7 and 8 cents divided by 109, 62. That's 51.97. And then 1,359.63 divided by 52.91, 25.69 cents. Mortgage, 142.285 divided by 13.95. That got a 101. This is cash flow index, what I'm doing. 6,180 divided by 270, 22. So when doing cash flow index, what does cash flow index say? Cash flow index says go after the lowest number first and work your way up. So cash flow index ignores interest cost. That snowball says I need to pay this off first. The 1,359 charged me 6.97%. That avalanche says pay this off, 6.97%. It's the highest interest rate and lowest balance. But cash flow index says from a cash flow perspective, pay this off first. Because by the time you pay this off, then you come to the personal loan, get rid of that. Then you go to the second personal loan, get rid of that. And then you finish the mortgage off last. You see what happened there? So 2 different debt elimination strategies are telling me to do different things. They're not, looking at the same numbers that are being presented. So at this point, it becomes either a mathematical solution that we would have to just iron out, well, which one gets me out of debt faster? And there's a high chance that cash flow index does get you out of debt faster. Sometimes it's not always the case, though. From what I've seen, this might be similar to that. But nonetheless, the results won't be too crazy because of his cost of money overall is not crazy, what we're dealing with here, right? So we did cash flow index. We did cash flow times 12. We got our 4 major numbers. We did cash flow times 66% to help us determine how much money we could safely save in a year while still servicing your debts, paying everything on time, and still having a chunk of change left over that still hasn't been purposed yet. Okay? So where we're at this point in our journey here on this one case is we have the potential where we're going to lead with our first primary strategy being developing a life insurance contract, a properly structured whole life insurance policy to save money first to protect his family with that death benefit of $1.5 million in case anything happens to him. His family would be just fine. He also puts life insurance on the spouse in case anything happens to the spouse and he's still working. The wife brings in some money, so her income needs to get replaced in case anything happens to her, and then death benefit gets paid out, right? Because he's going to need a lot of help to take care of 4 kids. He's not going to be able to work the way he could work if wife's no longer there taking care of the kids, right? So we're evaluating those additional factors. Again, these 4 questions to build that base, that foundation. How we're going to proceed before we proceed. Very, very important, right? You see what I'm doing here? So whole life insurance is our main foundational strategy before we pay off debt. We need to get these things set up first. So we're going to allocate $20,000 either all at once or over a period of time. $15K into one policy, $5K into another. Very safe, easy to do, according to his cash flow. $20,000 a year. $32,000 minus the 20, you're left with $12,830.80. We haven't decided yet what we're going to do with that spread, but we have options. And like I said, option one was you take that $12,830.80, simply invest it. So you're actually taking it out of your strategy, and that's for the long run. And you might map out a 4-year investing strategy, sending $12,800 a year, which is about $1,000 a month, a little over $1,000 a month, is going into a investment strategy that is somewhat liquid. Preferably, we don't want to put it in a qualified retirement account, because then we're not going to be able to access it to pay off all these debts, right? Because he still wants to pay off debt, but he wants to do it efficiently. And efficiently doesn't always necessarily mean the fastest. So I can tell you without a doubt, what we're engaging in right now is not the fastest way to get out of debt. But again, debt is not hurting this person. This person doesn't believe that debt puts him in an enslaved position. This person believes in the use of leveraging debt to get to their goals faster. And with proper leverage rules and understanding leverage capacity and understanding good stewardship, puts them in a more advantageous position overall. Do you agree with me or not? Put that in the comments, whether you agree with what I'm saying, if you're on board, or if I'm losing you, okay? And you'll have to, rewind, come back, watch it a few more times to fully get it. But my goal is to speak slowly through these things, because I know who I'm talking to, right? I know who's really gonna actually proceed with this kind of a move in their personal finances. So we have option one, 12,000, invest it. Option two, so that's one. Option two, dump into policy. I designed the policies in a way where we can put more money in there than what we're scheduling. So you could do that. Or three, debt snowball, essentially. I'll just say extra payments to debt. And if we incorporate cash flow index to tell us which debt to pay off first, then what's happening is you'd be paying off the medical debt, then jumping to the personal loan, then jumping to the next personal loan, and then finishing off at the mortgage, right? So now the final piece is the potential of maybe doing this, velocity banking. So velocity banking is the fourth move that would incorporate this, which is maybe on his mortgage, which has plenty of equity. We obtain a HELOC in the second position. So you're getting a second lien home equity line of credit at an interest rate in 2025, preferably below 7.5%. Some kind of an intro rate, no closing costs, preferably. And we could see ourselves maybe using the home equity line of credit to jumpstart these two policies, max funding them, okay? Now, in this case, I do believe he already has cash on hand to get the policies fully funded, so he may not even need to do that. But in terms of the difference of the 12, all right, so once I dump 20 into the two policies, right, I could just let that money sit in there, and it would, for the first 3 to 4 years, it operates as an emergency fund, right? And then they could use, potentially, it doesn't have to be, this just adds more complexity. They could use a HELOC if the rate is equal to or lower than these, preferably. Use velocity banking on just those two debts, and then just make extra payments. But I would still get a HELOC just to have it. So you get another layer of capital protection, if need be, not required, right? So that would be the only other added on thing here that I see. Maybe I'm missing something, right? But I think the simplest, most efficient thing that they could do is they decide to save a portion of their cash flow each year into these policies. Operate them as emergency funds for the first 3 years. Let them grow. Let the money grow. Take that difference of cash flow, $1,000 a month, and start making extra payments on these debts, right? Paying $1,000 plus $270 a month, this will be done in like 6 months, right? 6 months or less. Now you got $1,000 and $270. And then so 6 months later, you're hitting this, and in 1 month, now that's paid off. So that's 7 months right there. And then you go another 4 months, and now that's paid off. So 7 and 4 is 11. So we could say in 1 year or less, he pays this off, he pays this off, he pays this off. He's just left with the mortgage. He's got 20 grand saved, $2 million of death benefit, and he only used about $1,000 of his cash flow to create $270 a month, $52.91, $109.62. So created $432.53 of more cash flow, right? We'll delete this part here, and I'm going to tell you according to the designs I have here. By year 4, so by year 4 on wife, if we just put $5K a year, by year 4 we got about $18,257. And on husband, year 4, let me look at that real quick. On husband, we got what is it, 40,000, I think? Is that what it says? No. 55,272. 55,272. In 1 year, he pays off 3 debts. He's just left with the mortgage. So outside of saving 20 grand a year, we've got 12,830.80 in a year. Divided by 12 is 1,069.23, plus moving forward into this in year 2, we have this total cash flow we're moving with now of 432.53. So we're at 1501.76, and the last remaining debt is the mortgage of 1395, right? 1501.76 plus 1395. 2,896.76 is going towards debt pay down on his mortgage. Say he's just making extra payments. Let's just say. Still sending 20K a month into here. So 2,896.76. And we're going to times that by 12. So it's 34,000 a year. Right, rough estimations. Okay. 1395 times 12 is 1674. I'll round down. So I don't know how much of that is escrow, I forget. Let's say only 900. Say like 800 went to the principal. It's like 9,600. Okay, so 142, 285 minus 9 grand. So after a year, let's say the balance on the home is 133K. 133,500. Divided by 34,761. So that's still 3.8 years, right? So then what would happen is we're already 1 year in, so do 1 year for year 2, that's 1 year, year 3 is 2 years. Say by the 3rd year, they paid 34,761, 16 times 2. Say they paid like 70K toward this. And then do another year. 34, 761, 16. So I think that's 4 years total, 104,000. The rest they could have borrowed from the policy, right? Could do something like that. And they left that security blanket throughout paying off debt, because again, they weren't necessarily like going for speed, but they're going for efficiency, safety, building an asset, growing wealth, maybe investing, maybe not. Having that flexibility, not being like tied in, are what helps them build this entire thing out, right? And as I'm sharing this with you, like I still have to go to the client and work this through with them. They're gonna watch this and they're gonna review it and they'll say, you know what, I wanna take that piece, this piece, throw out that last piece, keep this, and we'll map that out. All right, so that's what gets really fun, is they're putting themselves in a position where they're giving themselves a lot of options to work with while maintaining good stewardship, good cash flow, keeping their options open. They're very, very efficient, not stressed at all on these debts, right? But they still want to get rid of it. And they get to do that by creating wealth. And that's what something like a whole life insurance contract that has liquidity allows them to do. And the money that's growing in this, completely tax-free. And I still left them with, 12,000+ a year. Like let's say they just did snowball for 1 year, extra payments with that first 12. Within 1 year, those 3 things are done. Now they got a $1,500 cash flow. And they might just say, all right, I'm just gonna make an extra payment of $500 toward the mortgage. The other 1,000 I'm gonna invest, and I'm gonna save 20 over here. And then once I get to year 4 or year 3, I'll take a big loan out of the policy and wipe out a majority of the loan balance. And then I might pull from my investment and borrow against that to pay that off and just redirect the interest, pay myself back over time. Not bad at all. That is a deep, deep masterclass using a case study, using real life numbers to help us figure out what debt payoff strategy we want to go about using. And you want to give yourself that time. Notice how we spent almost 2 hours here. You want to give yourself that time to really go through these videos, decide on potentially bringing in a financial professional, right? If it's me, wonderful. I'd love to be that person. If it's not, let's bring in someone that you spend a good amount of time viewing and learning from, maybe attending some free workshops that they have or classes, getting to know them, build that relationship. Then you're like, okay, here's some money to invest. I want to have your time to help me figure this all out, how I want to proceed. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up because I'm pretty much done here. I want to scroll up. I want to hold myself accountable. There was like 2 questions I saw earlier, and then I'm going to like do my best to skip through what I've already covered in certain questions and see as many questions I can get to before I gotta bounce, because I do gotta go soon. But if you've been enjoying this, got 51 people in the house, 49 likes. I really appreciate everybody liking the video. And if you want to save this, put it in a playlist, share it with somebody, I appreciate that as well. On this channel, we want to become really good stewards of our money. We want to be finance geeks, okay? We want to do the right things, the right moves at the right time. And in order to do that, I believe you have to have a financial foundation. You have to know, you have to have solid beliefs, convictions, have your facts in line. You need an accountability support system, preferably a coach as well. All right. So I've had a link at the top in the chat, and it's also in the description to work with me one-to-one. Go to my website, you'll see my different services that I have available. As of right now, you can jump on a call with me one-to-one. You join my course, get access to all my courses, everything I've ever created, and we do live workshops together offline, private Zoom, where you can come off mute, ask questions, that sort of thing. And we're just planning out your finances and holding you accountable in a community setting, okay? So let me get this one question in from Bianca. It says, I have a personal line of credit for $15,000 that I'm trying to keep at zero to have available to pay those 0% debts due in July. I also have a $550 per month personal loan, $10,000 left, doing little chunks there, $2,000 cash flow monthly. So she's saying that she has, and that really wasn't a question actually, it was just a statement. So I understand if that's cool. So she's got a $15,000 personal line of credit, and she's trying to keep a healthy amount of gap in there because she knows she's got these ticking time bombs, these 0% credit cards. So when you're doing velocity banking, you want to keep that in mind. If you're doing velocity banking with a personal line of credit as your main debt tool, but then you also have credit cards, right? You also have credit cards that you want to use. I have, my wife is calling me. So let me see if this is an emergency. Hello, my love. You are live on YouTube. I just want to make sure it's not an emergency.
I did not know I was live.
Yeah, you're live. I'm about to finish, but.
Okay. You're still live? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll call you back then.
Okay, I love you.
Love you. Bye.
Okay, bye. Cool. So not an emergency. We're good. All right. So let me continue on with these final questions here. Was from Pat. Pat says, hey, Denzel, I know you are using a first lien HELOC to fund your IBC policy, but I was wondering if you ever stack whole life policies where the cash value pays for the premiums of another policy, ? Pat, the answer is no. From the life insurance agent's point of view, right? And I know this is a strategy, right? Like what they call it stacking. Now, in the life insurance space, guys, like we got to be careful. I think the word is called churning or twisting, I forget. But essentially, it is frowned upon to, as a licensed agent, to encourage you as a customer to buy one policy for the purpose of taking the cash value out of that policy to fund another one, and then take the cash value out of there to fund another one, and kind of create a system of you're funding that initial policy, and then you borrow out of here to start this, borrow out of here to start this. You'll have 3 loans going at the same time. And when you use a whole life insurance contract, your most expensive years are in the front years. So what could happen with that strategy is you're injecting unnecessary amounts of risk, Pat, in my opinion, if you were to do that. If you are doing that, the way that I've seen it work is when the user is a life insurance agent. So they're collecting the commission on their own policy and then dumping that commission in the policy to cover the initial cost of starting that. Does that make sense? Right? So this is what it would kind of look like. Is say you put 50K into policy number 1 and you design it for max cash minimum base. Right? First of all, the life insurance companies frown upon this. Through training, they frown upon this. Like everybody, this is not okay, right? This could lose, someone could lose their license if they're actively preaching and teaching about doing this, right? Because they're just forgetting the risk part. You're injecting unnecessary amounts of risk. But I still want to map it out to show you what it could potentially look like. So 50K a year assumes the person has 50K to work with every single year, right? And then they borrow out of this one and they fund policy number 2. Maybe they put that on their wife, right? So this is husband, and they borrow from here to fund their wife's policy, boom. And maybe they borrow 25,000, right? Same thing, max cash minimum base. Then they borrow out of wife's policy to fund policy number 3 on their son, 21 years old, and they did 10K. So you'd have a loan for 25,000 at, let's say, 5.5%, and you'd have a 10K loan here for, say, 5.5%, and then no loan on this, because eventually you got to stop, right? You want to just keep doing it because you got to stop, because then you'll crush the strategy, essentially. So that's what that looks like. Loan, but one $50,000 policy funded 3 policies. Here's what I would say, right? That is safer to do is just split the 50 up. So maybe on dad, we put 25K, and on mom, we did 10,000. Okay. And then what's that? 10,000. And then 15 on son, or something like that. Just boom, boom, and boom. So I think that's more efficient because you're not taking any loans whatsoever, so you're not creating new expense, right, in this. And it's honestly safer because you're setting a lower expectation. Because technically what happened here, what actually happened? Well, they took 50K and they turned 50 into 75 and then 75 into 85,000. That's what they did here. right? Do you see that? Like 50K went in here. They took 25 out, but understand that when you borrow against a life insurance policy, your cash value still remained in there as if you didn't touch it. So that money's going to grow, right? And then you got this 25K and now you got 75,000 total life insurance premium, right? That you created out of debt. And then you borrowed from the 25, you took 10. So you have $85,000 in premium technically, as opposed to $50,000 in premium. The only way this works is if you continue to have $50,000 every year plus the cost of interest to carry the loans, right? So let's do that. 25,000 times 5.5% is 1,375. So that's your cost on 25K for the year. And then 10,000 at 5.5% is $550 for the year. So this person in the next year would need to have 50K plus 1,375 plus 550. So in year 2, in order for this to work, right? Year 2, you're going to need 51,925. And then year 2, you do it again. You do another loan for 25K. So now you have 50K in loans at say 5.5%. So now you're at 2,070 year 2. And now you got 20,000 in loans on this one at 5.5%. So now that's $1,100 in year 2. Okay. And then you do 1,100 plus 2,750 plus 50 grand. So in year 3, right? Year 2, you need 51,925. Year 3, you need $53,850. So this only works, this stacking whole life policy thing, if you know when to stop stacking. Number 1, that's key. You got to know when to stop, right? 2, you need to keep putting more money through the system to cover the loan interest costs each year. That's important. And understand that your income needs to keep going up, or cash flow needs to keep increasing to support the increasing cost of what you're creating inside the policy. Because by the time you get to year 3, look how much you have in loans. You got 30 grand in loans over here. You got 75,000 in loans over here. So you got 30 grand plus 75 grand. So you created $105,000 in loans. In 1 year. But what is the advantage here? Well, the advantage is you did start 3 policies using just 50K, but technically created yourself $85,000 of total premium instead of just 50, right? So again, this is frowned upon in the industry. Life insurance companies do not like this. They don't promote this. They even ask you when you're funding a life insurance policy in the application, they want to know how many policies you already have in place. And if you're borrowing, if you're using funds from the cash value to fund the new policy, you have to lie to the insurance company and say, no, I am not. And then they're going to ask you, where are the source of funds coming from to fund 3 policies in this span of time? So you have to lie in order to do the strategy. Your agent has to know what you're doing, and he or she has to lie for you on behalf of the insurance company, on behalf of the insurance agency that they work for. So everybody's lying, right? So you have that risk there. Can this be done? Yes. Why? Because it's been done before. People are doing this. Obviously, Pat knows about it, right? And many others know about it as well. And to the consumer, it seems like a really cool freaking strategy, right? You see the way I just mapped it out? Like, it actually sounds kind of cool. I just turned 50 grand into 85 grand. 85 grand is now growing. Now, obviously, not all of that 85 grand is growing in cash value, but over time it will, right? Over time, that money grows, right? So it's really interesting how a lot of our minds work sometimes. And again, like, remember how I said earlier, I don't call anybody stupid or call you ignorant or make you feel any less if you have a question, right? So notice how I didn't throw Pat down and like tell him he's crazy or anyone's wild. I actually ran through it, right? I ran through the numbers, showed it to him, had him really think on it, and say, yeah, you know what? I'll still do that, right? Because the like I probably have to be careful what I'm saying because like I'm a licensed insurance agent, but there is a term that is used when you're actually getting your life license that actually frowns upon doing this, and I don't know if it can result in the agent losing their license. I don't know if that is the penalty, but what I do know is that it's frowned upon. The insurance companies don't want you doing this. When you're applying for life insurance, the insurance company wants to know where the source of funds are coming from to pay for this life insurance policy. Because the other thing that this could look like is money laundering, right? This could also look like money laundering. So you have to also think like, holy crap, am I thinking like a criminal, right? Because you have to understand, like, there are certain people out there in the world that are really, really like smart and they think how they can finesse the system. And once it gets caught on enough times, eventually they create regulations and laws to prevent people from doing that. But these would all be red flags of, I think the word is churning or maybe stacking, and also red flags of money laundering, because you're basically cleaning the money, right? You take that 50K, you buy a policy, you insure another human being with the life insurance, you insure another human being. So a simple family of 3 could do this, right? But again, like, you're injecting kind of more risk, and it sounds really cool because you took 50 grand and you turned it into $85,000 of premium, but without having to come out of pocket 85 grand. It would take like 10 years before you're actually coming out of pocket 85 grand to fund these policies, right? But the problem here is eventually, Pat, you would have to stop like the churning. You'd have to stop eventually because the loans would get too heavy. They get too big inside of the policy. So what you would need to do at some point is you'd have to get your income and cash flow high enough where you're no longer like funding all those policies like max funding. So maybe you do short funded periods like 5-7 years, let's say, but you don't want to do it forever without increasing your income dramatically over time. Because, as I showed, 51,925 the second year, then you need 53, then it goes to like 56, and it starts to really stack over time. It can get a little scary. Pat says, thanks, Denzel. Appreciate it. Didn't know if you had to justify what the cash value loan would be used for. Love the content. Yes, so you do have to like lie to the insurance company. And I don't know what the ramifications would be on that, but I do know you can essentially tell like a little fib, kind of get away with it. And you also would need to space it out, right? So you have to fund the first policy, wait a few months, take a loan out, let that money sit, season in a checking account. Then you fund the policy on wife, let it settle, a few more months, do another loan. You have to space that kind of stuff out. If you do it too short, the insurance company is going to, boop, red flag. They're going to think you're doing money laundering. It's going to look kind of crazy, right? So now there are legitimate scenarios. Like I had a case where I had a client funding 70,000 a year into his policy, like 30,000 into his wife, 3,600 into his daughter. 1 year he was a little low on cash value, a little low on funding, total funding. So he put 70 grand into his, and he did borrow some of that, but not till like, I think it was like the second or third year. He borrowed from that to fund his wife's policy so that that would stay up to date. So there's times where you can do that, where you did borrow from one to basically pay for the premiums of an existing policy. That's not illegal. You're allowed to do that. Um, it's just not something I'm out here like preaching to my clients to go ahead and do. It's more of like a fail safe, a protection for the sake of max funding and keeping the policies healthy and enforced. You can easily borrow from here to get this other one funded and give you the time to make up for the money that you were intending to pay for, right? So the great question, Pat. I think it was really good. Um, I was just thinking until you get to the efficiency point in the policy for the first few years. Yeah, so the only way you get to the efficiency point is by making more money and then having a plan to start to like knock down the policy loan debt, or you're only max funding for like 3 years, 3, 4 years, something like that. And then you reduce the funding and you start splitting funding and payback of loans. That's how that would end up working out. So, yep, thanks a lot. Awesome. I know I skipped a bunch of questions probably in here. So forgive me. But I will have another live stream. We'll have another session together and we'll map out those details. I got to go attend to the wife. We have some plans. We have some cool things coming up. Wife's birthday is coming up this weekend. So y'all all pray for us. Appreciate everything that you all have been able to do for me to build the life that I've dreamed of and desired, and I'm actually living in it today just because of this relationship of the 1,000+ clients I work with and all the people that have purchased stuff from me, that work with my partners and put life insurance policies in place. All of that has resulted in income, revenue for me, my life, my business, and has put me in a position to be financially independent, sound, clear thinking, to serve you at the highest capacity, and has put me in a position to now, afford to be able to get married and do all these wonderful things. So again, I invite you to the live proposal watch party, February 11th. Let me verify that is what we're doing. February 11th, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Mark your calendar. It is live on the YouTube channel. You can see it. That's the next live stream that is being presented. And that is all for now. Email me directly if you put some questions that you want me, to answer and it's pertinent. I will go through those questions. Email is the best way to get a hold of me, right? Or filling out my contact form on my website. And I do everything in my power to get to those questions as quickly as I can, but understand I get hundreds. So I am a little bit behind, but just know that when you get a response, it's from me. And then I do have my automated responses that chances are it's going to answer your question more than likely. So with that, God bless you all. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. And until next time, talk soon. Bye now.